If you have ever cleaned your home, put everything back where it belongs, and then a few days later found yourself dealing with the same mess all over again, then you already know how frustrating it can feel when nothing seems to stick, because it starts to feel like no matter how much effort you put in, the result never really lasts. And this is where most organizing advice quietly gets it wrong, because it focuses on what looks good in the moment instead of what actually works in real life, especially on the days when you are tired, distracted, or simply not in the mood to keep everything perfectly in place. The truth is, the real test of a good organizing product is not whether it looks nice the day you set it up, but whether it still works on those low-energy days, because that is exactly where most systems begin to fall apart. And the few that continue to work are the ones that are actually worth keeping. Before we get into them, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, because what I am sharing here is not about perfection or unrealistic routines, but about making your home easier to live in over time. And that is something that becomes more important as everyday energy shifts. I'll also leave a few simple links in the description for anything mentioned here, just in case you want to see examples. But you can always use what you already have at home as well. There is something many people only begin to notice after dealing with this for a while, which is that the problem is not usually how much you own, but how much effort it takes to use and put things away every single day. When every small action involves extra steps, whether that means bending, reaching, digging through layers, or trying to remember where something was placed, those small moments begin to add up, and over time the space starts to feel more tiring than supportive. And this is where things start to change, because once you reduce that effort, even slightly, the same home begins to feel very different. Not because everything is suddenly perfect, but because it becomes easier to maintain without constant attention. That is exactly what these products are designed to do. One of the clearest examples of this is the clear storage bin. The clear storage bin changes how you interact with your belongings in a very simple but practical way, because instead of relying on memory or opening multiple containers just to find what you need, you can see everything at a glance. And that immediately removes a layer of effort that most people do not even realize they are dealing with every day. When items are hidden, they tend to be forgotten. And when they are forgotten, they either sit unused or get replaced unnecessarily. But when they are visible, they stay part of your awareness without requiring extra thought. This does not mean you will never misplace anything again, or that everything will stay perfectly organized all the time, because that would not be realistic. But it does mean you spend less time searching and second-guessing, and that difference becomes noticeable very quickly. Closely connected to this is the deep pantry bin. The deep pantry bin addresses something that quietly happens in most kitchens, which is that items get pushed to the back of shelves over time, and once they are out of sight, they tend to stay there until they are forgotten. At first, everything looks organized, but as new items come in, older ones move further back, and the space slowly becomes harder to use. The deep pantry bin changes that by allowing you to group similar items together and move them as one unit. So instead of reaching into the back of a shelf or shifting multiple things just to grab one item, you simply pull the bin forward and everything comes with it. A simple way to start with this is by choosing just one shelf and grouping similar items together, rather than trying to reorganize the entire pantry at once, because small changes like that are much easier to maintain. And once you start to notice this pattern, something becomes very clear. It is not about having more storage, it is about making the storage you already have easier to use. Another product that follows this same idea is the fridge condiment tray. In many refrigerators, condiments end up scattered across different areas. And while that may not seem like a major problem, it creates a repeated pattern of searching, shifting, and checking multiple places just to find one thing. The fridge condiment tray brings those smaller items into one contained space. So instead of managing several bottles individually, you are simply pulling out one tray that holds everything together. This does not eliminate clutter in the fridge completely, because things will still move around over time, but it makes it much easier to reset and keeps the most frequently used items from becoming a daily frustration. From there, another tool that reduces a different kind of effort is the grocery list notepad. The grocery list notepad removes the need to remember what you need later, because instead of holding that information in your head, you write it down the moment you notice something is running low. And over time, this prevents forgotten items, unnecessary trips to the store, and the small stress that comes from trying to keep track of everything mentally. Some people prefer digital tools, and those can work as well, but the advantage of a physical notepad is that it stays visible and accessible without requiring any extra steps, which makes it easier to stick with. Now, here is where most people start to feel the difference. As these small adjustments begin to take effect, the surfaces in the home start to change, because clutter tends to build up most quickly in these visible areas. And once those surfaces feel crowded, the entire room starts to feel heavier. This is where the wall-mounted rod and bucket system becomes useful. The wall-mounted rod and bucket system works by lifting frequently used items off flat surfaces and placing them within easy reach on the wall, which immediately creates more open space while still keeping everything accessible. Instead of items spreading across counters, they are given a defined place. And that balance between visibility and containment is what makes the system easier to maintain. Another important addition that supports daily life in a broader way is the command center. The command center is a single place where schedules, reminders, notes, and plans are kept together. And instead of relying on memory or searching through different areas for information, everything is visible in one location. This does not mean life suddenly becomes perfectly organized, because things will still change and days will still feel busy, but it reduces the constant need to track information mentally, which can make a noticeable difference over time. And this is where things move from just looking organized to actually feeling easier to live with. As the home becomes easier to use, it also becomes easier to notice the spaces that were always there, but never really used well. And one of the most common of these is the inside of cabinet doors. This is where the cabinet door storage system becomes valuable. The cabinet door storage system turns that unused space into something functional by giving smaller items a place to live without taking up shelf or counter space. And that small adjustment can make a bigger difference than expected, because it reduces clutter while keeping things within easy reach. You will still have days where things get a little out of place, because that is simply part of living in a real home. But the difference is that it becomes much easier to bring everything back to order without feeling like you are starting all over again. Once the shared areas of the home begin to feel easier to manage, the next place where the difference really starts to show is in your personal spaces, because this is where daily routines happen. And if those routines require too much effort, even small tasks like getting dressed or putting things away can quietly become frustrating over time. And this is where many people do not immediately connect the problem to the setup, because it often feels like a habit issue, when in reality it is often a structure issue. One of the first products that begins to shift this is the Streamlining hangers. Streamlining hangers change how a closet behaves in a very practical way, because instead of bulky hangers taking up extra space and allowing clothes to slide off or bunch together, they create a consistent structure where each item stays in place and is easier to see. When clothes stop falling, shifting, and overlapping, the closet becomes easier to use without constant adjustment, And that reduction in small frustrations is what allows the space to stay organized over time. This does not mean your closet will always look perfectly arranged, because that would not be realistic. But it does mean that once you hang something up, it is far more likely to stay where it belongs. Closely connected to this is the acrylic purse organizer. The acrylic purse organizer solves a problem that tends to build slowly, which is the way bags collapse, fall over, and become tangled when they are stored without structure. At first, it may not seem like a big issue, but over time it turns into a space that feels inconvenient to use, because every time you reach for one item, you end up disturbing several others. The acrylic purse organizer gives each bag a defined place, allowing them to stand upright and remain visible. And that simple structure removes the need to constantly rearrange or restack them, which makes the system much easier to maintain. Now here is where things start to feel different in a more personal way. The makeup table is one of those changes that may seem unnecessary at first, but becomes surprisingly practical once it is in place, because it creates a dedicated area where everything you need to get ready is already set up. Instead of moving between rooms, sharing limited space, or standing for long periods while trying to complete a routine, you have a consistent, comfortable place to sit and take your time. This is not about luxury or appearance. It is about reducing friction in one of the most repeated parts of your day. And when that routine becomes easier, the effect carries into everything that follows. From there, another shift begins to happen in how clothing is stored. And this is where large storage baskets become useful. Large storage baskets work especially well for items that do not need to be folded perfectly, such as sleepwear, workout clothes, or everyday casual items, because instead of trying to maintain a system that requires precision, you create one that allows for quick and simple storage. When putting something away becomes as easy as placing it into a basket, you are far more likely to do it consistently, and that is what keeps the space under control over time. For many people, especially seniors, this also reduces the physical strain of bending, folding, and reorganizing drawers repeatedly, which makes daily routines feel more manageable. Another product that combines function in a very efficient way is the jewelry mirror cabinet. The jewelry mirror cabinet works by bringing together two needs into one space, which is storage for accessories and a full-length mirror. And instead of having jewelry scattered across different areas or stored in small containers that are easy to forget about, everything is kept in one vertical, organized location. This not only reduces clutter, but also makes it easier to see and access what you have, which encourages regular use instead of items being overlooked. And once you start to notice this pattern, something becomes very clear again. The easier something is to see and access, the more likely you are to actually use it and put it back. This same idea shows up in a different way when it comes to electronics. And this is where the charging station becomes important. The charging station brings together your phone, watch, and other devices into one organized place, which reduces the spread of cords across surfaces and eliminates the need to plug and unplug things in different areas. Instead of dealing with tangled cables and scattered devices, everything stays in one location, which makes it easier to keep track of and easier to maintain. Another area that often goes unused but becomes incredibly helpful once activated is the space under the bed. And this is where under-bed rolling storage comes in. Under-bed rolling storage allows you to store items out of sight while still keeping them accessible, and because it slides in and out easily, it removes the need to lift heavy containers or reach into awkward spaces. This makes it especially useful for items that you do not use every day, but still want nearby. Now here is where flexibility becomes important. The hanging shoe organizer is one of the most versatile tools in the home because although it is designed for shoes, it can be used for a wide range of items, including small household objects, folded clothing, or even hobby supplies. Its narrow design allows it to use vertical space without taking up floor area, which makes it especially useful in smaller rooms or areas where space needs to be used carefully. Another simple but essential tool that keeps everything from falling apart over time is the drawer divider. The drawer divider creates structure within a drawer by separating items into defined sections, which prevents them from shifting, mixing, and turning into one cluttered space. Without this kind of boundary, even well-organized drawers tend to lose structure over time. But with it, the space remains easier to read and easier to use. This does not mean drawers will never become messy again, because they will, but it makes it much easier to reset them without having to start from scratch each time. And this is where the real benefit begins to show. Daily routines start to feel smoother, not because everything is perfect, but because the effort required to move through your space has been reduced. And when that effort stays low, the system becomes something you can actually live with instead of something you have to constantly fight to maintain. As the home begins to feel easier to move through and maintain in both shared and personal spaces, the final layer of organization usually happens in the areas that tend to collect the things you do not deal with immediately, which are the small decisions, the temporary items, and the objects that do not have a clear place yet, because this is where clutter often builds quietly over time. And this is where things either start to fall apart again or finally begin to hold together in a way that feels sustainable. One of the most useful tools for this stage is the temporary memory bin. The temporary memory bin gives you a place to put important items that you are not ready to deal with right away, such as documents, mail, or sentimental pieces, without letting them spread across different surfaces. Instead of forcing yourself to make a decision in the moment, you give those items a temporary home and then come back to them later when you have the time and energy. This does not remove the need to sort through them eventually, because that still has to happen, but it prevents clutter from building up in multiple places and keeps everything contained in one manageable area. Closely connected to this is the over-the-door organizer. The over-the-door organizer makes use of space that is often ignored completely, which is the back of a door, and turns it into vertical storage that does not take up any additional room. Whether it is used for everyday items or things you need to keep within reach, it creates an easy access system that helps reduce pressure on shelves, drawers, and floor space. For many seniors, this also reduces the need to bend or reach into lower areas, which makes everyday use more comfortable. Now here is where flexibility becomes a real advantage. The rolling utility cart is one of those tools that adapts to your needs instead of forcing you into a fixed system, because it can be used for different purposes depending on what you are doing, whether that is organizing supplies, working on a hobby, or keeping essentials nearby. Instead of moving back and forth between rooms, the cart moves with you, and when you are finished, it can be rolled away, which keeps the space clear without adding extra effort. Another simple but very practical solution is the random household bin. The random household bin gives you a place for items that do not yet have a clear home, which is something that happens more often than people expect. Instead of leaving those items scattered across surfaces or placing them in random drawers, you keep them in one contained space, then go through them later when you are ready to decide what to keep, move, or remove. This approach works because it respects real life, where not every decision can be made immediately, but still keeps things from getting out of control. From there, one of the most important long-term systems is the household management binder. The household management binder brings together important information such as documents, instructions, schedules, and reference materials into one place, which removes the need to search through multiple areas or try to remember where something was stored. When everything important is in one location, it creates a sense of structure and reduces the mental effort required to manage everyday responsibilities. This becomes especially helpful in situations where you need to find something quickly, because you already know exactly where to look. Now here's the part that supports everything quietly in the background. The smart speaker assistant may not seem like a traditional organizing tool, but it plays a very practical role by helping you manage reminders, lists, and small daily tasks without needing to stop what you are doing. Instead of trying to remember everything or write things down immediately, you can simply say it out loud and let the system handle it. This does not replace good habits entirely, but it reduces the mental load, which makes everything else easier to maintain. As these systems come together, smaller tools begin to play an important role in keeping things from slipping over time, and one of these is the clutter catcher basket. The clutter catcher basket gives you a place to put items that collect throughout the day, such as mail, small objects, or things that need to be put away later. And instead of allowing them to spread across different surfaces, they stay contained in one location until you have time to deal with them. Another practical tool that supports daily maintenance is the Tidy Tote. The Tidy Tote allows you to carry cleaning supplies and small items as you move through the house, which reduces the need to go back and forth repeatedly, and this makes it easier to clean in small moments instead of turning it into a larger task that requires more energy. This is especially helpful on days when you do not feel like doing a full clean, because it supports small, manageable actions that still keep the home in good condition. Another product that improves access in deeper storage areas is the Divided Lazy Susan. The Divided Lazy Susan allows items to rotate within a contained space, which makes it easier to reach things that would otherwise be placed at the back of a shelf, and the divided sections keep items from falling over or mixing together, which helps maintain order even with regular use. And finally, one of the simplest tools that ties everything together is label stickers. Label stickers remove hesitation by clearly showing where things belong, so instead of pausing to think about where something should go, you simply follow what is already defined. This does not mean everything will always be returned perfectly, but it makes it much more likely that items go back to the right place consistently. And that consistency is what keeps the system working over time. When all of these pieces begin to work together, something important starts to happen. The home stops depending on constant effort to stay organized. Instead, it becomes a system that supports you in small ways throughout the day. And those small reductions in effort are what make the biggest difference over time. This does not mean your home will never feel messy again, because that is part of living in a real space. But it does mean that when things do get out of place, it is much easier to bring everything back into balance without feeling overwhelmed. What makes all of this work is not any one product on its own, but how they reduce effort in different parts of your day so the entire home begins to feel easier to manage as a whole. And if one of these ideas stood out to you, start with just that one change and see how it feels in your own space. Because small adjustments like this are often what create the biggest difference over time. And if this kind of practical, realistic approach is helpful for you, you can like the video and subscribe, and I will keep sharing simple ways to make everyday life a little easier.